So let's talk about some of the Buddhas that we might encounter in Mahayana texts. So here's our good buddy Shakyamuni Buddha, often known as the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama of the Shakya clan. The name Shakyamuni means the sage of the Shakya clan. This is one of the common names for the Buddha in Mahayana Buddhism. According to traditional stories about the Buddha, he was an Indian prince who lived about 500 BCE, 2,500 years ago, who then set out on the path to awakening, leaving behind his privileged lifestyle to understand what is the nature of suffering, and is there something beyond ordinary human suffering. The Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, which, if I'll say quickly, number one, I'm stressed out. Number two, I'm stressed out because I ignorantly cling to things, thinking that things will give me ultimate satisfaction. Problem is, things aren't ultimately satisfactory, and that stresses me out. However, there's a solution, and the solution is nirvana. There is that which is beyond this cycle of death and rebirth and clinging and so on. And the way to achieve nirvana is through the Buddhist path, right? Within Mahayana traditions, the Buddha often is seen as presenting, revealing to beings that they already have the capacity to awaken, that awakening is something that they already have within them and something that they can achieve, fundamentally. Now, one of the other interesting things in some Mahayana sutras, such as the Lotus Sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Mahavajracana Sutra, and so on, is that the Buddha Shakyamuni, as we understand him, as this guy who lived 2,500 years ago, was but one part of the story. That in fact, Shakyamuni may be an expression of an eternal cosmic force that is guiding all beings to awakening. In the Lotus Sutra, we learn about the eternal Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni is this force that guides beings. Right? In addition to Shakyamuni, we have lots of other great Buddhas. This Buddha is Buddha Amitabha. And according to the Pure Land Sutra, long ago, perhaps in a galaxy far, far away, maybe not, there was a king, and this king discovered that there was a Buddha living in his land. He renounced his throne and pursued the Bodhisattva path, and he desired to create a perfect land where beings could easily achieve awakening. As a Bodhisattva, he pursued the path and studied all of the Buddha lands throughout the cosmos, throughout the multiverse, we might call it, and made a series of vows. And upon accomplishing these vows, made a land called Sukhavati, also known as the land of bliss, the pure land of bliss. Mahayana texts assume that there are limitless worlds and limitless Buddhas guiding beings to awakening in these limitless worlds. Upon achieving awakening, this particular, this Bodhisattva who wanted to create this land received two Buddha names. When he became a Buddha, he got two names. One of them is Amitabha. Amitabha means infinite light or limitless light. This is a symbol for wisdom. The other name is Amitayus. Amitayus means infinite life. This is a symbol for compassion. So this Buddha is, in a sense, a symbol for infinite life and infinite light, wisdom and compassion. So these are the two birds of the Buddhist, the two wings of the Buddhist tradition, right? If you become truly wise, you are compassionate. If you are, as you deepen in compassion, you become truly wise, right? One of the practices that we associate with this Buddha is Buddhanusmrti in Sanskrit, Nianpo in Chinese, and Nembutsu in Japanese. Basically, this means mindfulness of Buddha, right? Think about it. Like, we often spend a lot of our mental energy fixated on things that are not necessarily good for us, but if we focus on a Buddha, we are focusing on something that is ultimately good for us, right? So in some traditions, the Buddhanusmrti means the meditation and contemplation upon a Buddha, but in some traditions, this mindfulness of Buddha takes the form of chanting the Buddha's name. So in Sanskrit, it would be Namo Amitabhaya Buddhaya. In Chinese, Namo Amitofo. In Japanese, Namo Amida Butsu. Yeah. It could be argued that in the East Asian Mahayana context, this Buddha is maybe the most popular. And the recitation of his name, or their name, Buddhas aren't really boys or girls, right? Recitation of the name is maybe one of the most important practices, most popular practices in the Buddhist world, the Mahayana Buddhist world anyway. Okay. Next, we have the medicine Buddha, right? The Buddha was often compared to a doctor, right? A doctor who gives out different remedies depending on your affliction, right? As I said before, the teaching that is appropriate for me might not be the teaching that is appropriate for you, because we have different needs, different problems, different afflictions, different inclinations and capacities, right? So the Buddha was then therefore, kind of imagined as a medicine Buddha. Now, this is one of the most popular Buddhas in the Mahayana world, whether we're in Tibet or China or Japan. Some of the major temples in Japanese Buddhism are actually dedicated to the medicine Buddha. You can always pick him out because he's holding a medicine jar. And it's said to cure, an engagement with this Buddha, reciting his mantra and so on, is said to cure physical ailments in this world and spiritual ones in the next. The Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha, Sukhavati, is to the west of our world. The Pure Land of the Medicine Buddha is to the east of our world. The Pure Land of Lapis Lazuli. This is another very interesting Buddha associated with some of the tantric traditions in East Asia. This is the Buddha Mahavarochana, or the Great Sun Buddha. And this is a kind of anthropomorphic representation of Buddha reality. So this is not a Buddha in the traditional sense, like the Medicine Buddha or Amitabha Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha. This is all Buddhas, all bodhisattvas, all gods, all beings, right? According to the traditions associated with this Buddha, which became very popular in Japan, all forms, all bodies are the body of Mahavarochana. All speech is the speech of Mahavarochana. And then all mentation is the mind of Mahavarochana. In other words, everything is Mahavarochana. This is a way of thinking about the idea that body, speech, and mind, we are ultimately one with Buddha reality and not apart from it. So those are some of the Buddhas that you might encounter in Mahayana texts. Now let's talk about bodhisattvas. So these are beings that are on the path to awakening, but who are not yet Buddhas, yet, right? So a bodhisattva, the word bodhisattva means something like an enlightened being, or according to one translation, an enlightening being, a being that is in process on the way to awakening. A bodhisattva seeks to perfect 6 qualities: generosity, morality, forbearance, vigor, contemplation, wisdom, and so on. A bodhisattva is, on the one hand, is one who vows to become a Buddha, right? At kind of the basic level. But on the other hand, a bodhisattva is one who vows to save all beings from samsara. In other words, they vow to help all beings achieve Buddhahood, right? Especially for the Mahayana tradition, right? Buddhas and bodhisattvas, their awakening doesn't really take place unless our awakening takes place, right? We have this nice phrase, right? My liberation is not apart from your liberation. And I think that's really one of the core virtues of the bodhisattva path to Buddhahood, right? A bodhisattva, like a Buddha, may manifest in many different forms. According to the chapter on the bodhisattva of compassion, she may appear to you as a king, a queen, a boy, a girl, a minister, a local god, a Buddha, or a monk, or whatever else. May take on any other form to help you awaken, right? So this is really all to say that the path to awakening is something that not only you may pursue, but it may pursue you as well, right? Which I think is kind of interesting. And like Buddhas, bodhisattvas may employ upaya, or skillful means, to teach beings in whatever form or way is most appropriate. One of the most important bodhisattvas in the Buddhist world, Mahayana or not, is this bodhisattva Maitreya. Maitreya is said to currently reside in one of the many heavens, the Tushta heaven above our world. And it's said that, that Shakyamuni Buddha, when he was still alive, said, "My teachings will last for a set period of time, and then they will disappear. And when they disappear, a new Buddha will appear in the world, and his name is Maitreya." Right? Maitreya is revered within both Mahayana and non-Mahayana traditions. Another very important bodhisattva is Manjushri Bodhisattva, the bodhisattva of wisdom. He holds the sword of wisdom, right, which kind of cuts away ignorance. He holds a lotus blossom, and on top of the lotus blossom is often a sutra. Yeah. So again, he has and then he rides on top of a lion. Sometimes said that the Buddha, when he would speak, had the lion's roar. It's kind of, proclaiming the wisdom of the Dharma to everyone. Yeah. Manjushri is very popular in Tibetan Buddhism and other, in other Mahayana traditions as well. Right? Arguably, the most popular bodhisattva in the Mahayana world is Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the name means something like the Lord who looks down upon the world and hears the cries of beings. Right. So this is compassion, personified. Right. This is the bodhisattva compassion, closely associated with the Lotus Sutra as well as the Buddha Amitabha, often described in texts associated with Amitabha. In fact, Avalokiteshvara often has a little statue of Amitabha in her crown. This form represents the 1,000-hand, 11-head version. There are many different forms that this bodhisattva may take to aid beings. This bodhisattva is often depicted as male in Tibet and India, but as female in East Asia. So when I talk about this bodhisattva, I tend to use the pronoun she because most of the times I've seen her in China and Japan, it's been in the form of a woman. Therefore, she is often associated with often thought of as a protector of women and children and so on. But again, many, these Buddhas and these bodhisattvas may be thought of as beings that come into the world to guide you and help you. They can also be understood as inherent capacities you have in your very own mind. I think that kind of dichotomy is really interesting. Okay, another important bodhisattva is some Mahastama Prapta. Mahastama Prapta, the bestower of great strength, is the other attendant bodhisattva for the Buddha Amitabha in the Pure Land, often appearing side by side with Avalokiteshvara. He has a little vase in his crown as opposed to an image of Buddha Amitabha. And one of the texts that I was working on for my book tells a story of how, upon your deathbed, you may have a vision of the Buddha and the bodhisattvas coming to greet you, to take you to the realm of enlightenment. And Mahastama Prapta reaches out a hand, to take your hand. And I just remember that being a really, really beautiful image. Next, we have Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Samantabhadra, whose name means universal worthy, is kind of the prototypical great bodhisattva practitioner, said to aid you along the bodhisattva path. He rides on top of an elephant. He appears in chapter 28 of the Lotus Sutra, throughout the Avatamsaka Sutra, and so on. He's also the protector of Lotus Sutra devotees. One of the things that he is said to do is that if you're a monk and your job is to memorize these sutras, and you forget a character, you forget a whole line, don't worry, he's got your back, right? He'll say the part that you forgot. I think that's really cool, right? All right, on to the next one. Next, we have Kshetigarbha Bodhisattva, also known as Jizo Bodhisattva in Japan. It's generally taken for granted that, the great bodhisattvas and Buddhas acquire Buddha lands where beings can be reborn to practice the Dharma. This bodhisattva, you'll notice he looks like an ordinary monk. He doesn't have a crown, he's not covered in jewels. And the reason he looks like an ordinary monk is that he abides within our world. He lives in the 6 realms, which we talked about last time, right? The heavens, the Ashura, the humans, the hungry ghosts, the animals, and the hells. So you'll often see this bodhisattva depicted in 6 different forms because he lives in all 6 realms simultaneously. One of the other cool powers that bodhisattvas have is being able to make multiple versions of themselves, right? This bodhisattva is commonly associated with children, as well as memorial services for children who die young or aborted fetuses as well. Again, he has a typically unadorned appearance, and also, interestingly enough, associated with being a protector of travelers. So in Japan, you would sometimes see him at like crossroads, to kind of protect the travelers who were going back and forth. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva compassion, is also often thought of as a protector of travelers and whatnot. Next, we have the Devas. The Devas are the gods. Now, the word Deva is Sanskrit as the gods of India. In China, we might call them Shan or Tian, and then Japan, Kami or Ten. Okay, so the Deva are the gods of India, and then the Shan or Kami are the gods of China and Japan. There's this interesting thing that happens in Japan where So like typically, gods are understood to be beings like us. They're stuck in samsara. They might help you like do well on an exam or have a safe, safe childbirth or safety in travel, things like that. They can be helpful for that, but they can't get you enlightened. They can't take you, out of samsara to nirvana because they're stuck just like we are. However, in Japan, there's this interesting thing that happens where the local gods, as well as the gods that are brought from India and China into Japan, are understood to be uh, forms of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that the Buddha and Bodhisattva may appear to you, again, they appear to you in a form that is appropriate for you, and perhaps that might take the form of a local god. Yeah. So we have this term Shinbutsu Shugo, that the gods and Buddhas are ultimately one. And this is something that eventually produces the thing that we now call Shinto in Japan, which maybe we'll do a whole day on Shinto at some point as well. So it's an important component of kind of how the gods and the Buddhas are kind of interrelated to one another. In the same way that ordinary beings are not separate from Buddha reality, the gods as well may be seen as expressions of that as well. One of the things I love about studying Buddhism in Japan is that you can go to a Japanese Buddhist temple and encounter Hindu gods. One of my personal favorite is Saraswati. That's why she's first here in the list. She's the goddess of the arts and letters and music. She's known as Benzai Ten in Japan, and is very, very popular as a god or as a form of a particular Buddha. Yeah. Next, we have the god Shiva, all right, the god of yoga, meditation, death, and renewal, and so on. In Japan, he comes to be known as Daikokuten, the Great Black One, and he's generally associated with good fortune, wealth, and economic prosperity. It's a very interesting transition. So, with Saraswati, they look kind of similar, but Shiva, Shiva is another one of these gods that has many different forms, and this is the form that he seems to take on in Japan. Yeah. Then we have the god Ganesha, right? Ganesha is often invoked at the beginning of rituals or the beginning of important, life events. Hindu friends and colleagues of mine often have statues of Ganesha by the front door, right? So you can see him on your way out or on your way back. Ganesha is the god of beginnings, the remover of obstacles, but sometimes, like many gods, Ganesha has kind of a dual nature. He might also put obstacles in your path to, teach you a lesson, to help you along. Sometimes the obstacles are to help you along, right? So he's another important protector deity for the Dharma as well, right? Finally, we have the goddess Amaterasu. This is the sun goddess, and regarded as the kind of progenitor of the imperial family, the great ancestor of the Japanese people. Possible origin in Korea and in sericulture or silk production cults. And in Japanese Buddhism comes to be associated with Dainichi, the great sun Buddha. Right, so sun goddess, great sun Buddha, they kind of saw them as one and the same, right? So that is a brief overview of some of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and gods and general concepts that we may encounter in the Mahayana tradition.